It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Friday, September 9th. And this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this fabulous Friday? We've got current news from around the world. We have the word study about the Wednesday message, and let's testify with Tuli from Australia. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? Yes, Friday has officially come, and I'm sure all of you are getting ready to enjoy another amazing weekend. So I hope you guys are looking forward to some fun, relaxation, realization, new direction from the Sunday message. So let's get things kicked off here together on the Morning Star Drive. So keep liking and commenting, whether you're on SoundCloud or YouTube. Let's build this English-speaking community in Providence. I want to hear from you guys, see how you're doing. Post your song requests, questions, stories, all those things. Just get it out there. We'd love to hear what you're talking about. People are now commenting a lot more, people commenting on other people's comments. So I'm really thankful and grateful that we are building something. And it's taken about 2.5 years, but it takes time to build these types of cultures and communities. But super thankful and super grateful. Now, today we also have, like I said, the last segment of the entire week is always Fridays. It is Let's Testify with Tuli from Australia, so I'm really looking forward to this one here too. Did you guys check out the poll yet on the Morning Star Drive YouTube channel? I got a poll coming up every single Tuesday, and this week's poll question's about which Bible character do you relate to the most? And there has been a shift. There is now a shift in who the top person is, but it's actually David now. So David is now 37% of the people who voted think they're like David, a little bit like more emotional. And then Martha, who was number one, jumps to number two, drops to number two to 32%. And it's for people who focus too much on work. And then not last but only, but the third top is going to be Jonah, who's kind of defiant, kind of goes against what God says. But in the end, he eventually comes back. So 16% of the people have voted themselves for Jonah. So that's quite interesting. But just those top three, that is 60, 70, 85% of the people are either David, Martha, and Jonah. Right, so that's quite interesting. It's interesting to kind of, when we look at these Bible characters to look at who's the most relatable. The interesting part I like about this question, and this is cool because it's Jusung over there in LA. He's the one that came up with this question for me, and I think it's a great question because it requires us to look at ourselves. Right? It requires us to look at ourselves, and it requires us to actually do something about it. Like, even if for myself, I would say I would be more closer to Apostle John or James because they were the sons of thunder, which were known to be kind of like passionate, like over passionate, right? Or maybe a Paul, right? I'd be overzealous, right? I got an idea, I just go full in on it too. And of course, in those things you can make mistakes also. So for me, I would say I would be more closer to Paul, right? And I go in head first, and then if it's something to do, I just go and do it, which can cause a lot of mistakes and irk people the wrong way too. But I like it because it requires us to take a look at ourselves. All right. So this poll is going to be, it's going to be up forever, but we're going to be moving on these polls every Tuesday. So you got the entire weekend. For those of you guys who haven't voted yet, go ahead, check out the YouTube channel under the community section, and you'll find these polls. Okay. So I had a really cool talk over the weekend with a friend of mine, and we were talking about life choices and decisions for our future. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know what we're talking about too. But we were talking, and we were discussing that we found something very, very interesting. Right? Really interesting when people have how you can tell when someone has a bias. And of course, it is quite easy to tell if someone is more leaning towards one side than the other, right? It's pretty easy to kind of assess that because you can see it, feel it in their voice. But I was trying to think to myself, how would you break it down? Like how we do word studies. Like, how would you break down to know if someone has a real bias, right? And what I realized while I was talking to my friend is when you have a bias, you always compare the pros of your side to the cons of the other side you don't like, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say that it's we're going to compare chocolate and vegetables. Right? So you're going to talk about the best chocolate or the healthiest chocolate, like, oh, but you have dark chocolate. But of course, there's white chocolate, milk chocolate, everything else. But you'll only talk about the healthy one. Oh, but dark chocolate's really healthy for you. It's got a lot of antioxidants and it still tastes pretty good. And then what you'll do is you'll compare it to the worst of the vegetables. It's like, oh man, but broccoli, oh, it's so horrible. I don't like the taste. And like you have to cook them. But chocolate, you can eat it by itself. But vegetables, you have to cook them because I can't eat raw vegetables. And what you start doing is you compare the extremes, which makes you feel like your decision is the best decision, right? And it's like, oh, some veggies, like it's just not all of them. It's like celery. Celery is negative calories and it's basically all water, and it takes more time to digest and more energy to digest. So you're actually getting negative calories from celery, right? So it's kind of like do I really want that? You need calories to get energy and stuff, right? But this is negative calories. So what we do is we tend to compare the best of the idea we like to the worst of the other idea we don't like. Right? And this is kind of like, it's very interesting how we compare extremes, which makes us feel like our decision is far better. I'm not sure if you guys have ever caught yourselves in that type of, when it's not that you caught yourself or you catch other people's doing that. And so what is the proper way to do it? And I was thinking to myself is, if you really want to compare properly, you would have to, if you're going to go extreme pros, then you'd have to compare the extreme pros of both decisions. You can't compare the pros to the cons. You have to compare pros to pros. And if it's extreme pros, then extreme pros to extreme pros, right? And then on the flip side, like yesterday we were, I'm at my buddy's house, Pastor Nate, and he has his baby Oliver here. And 2 or 3 days ago, just crying for like 3 hours. And if you look at that, you could just look at that and say, oh, this is why I don't want to have a baby. However, that's looking at the con of having a baby. But when you look at the pros, like even this morning, you can have, Oliver fussy yesterday, but today he wakes up in the morning, he's so happy, and you're just in love with this kid. You can't help it, right? And you see the pros about it too. And it's very, very difficult. Like it's easy to take something, a negative, like a moment and say, this is how bad it is. But reality is you kind of got to see it from the full spectrum, right? And I think it's something very, very important for all of us to do too, right? Please comment on this too. Have you noticed yourself or others doing this? But I think it's a very, very important thing for us to, when you really want to make a good decision, don't base it on your bias. Like, I like this decision, but you need to base it on, I like this because, right? Or I'm choosing this because I like this con compared to the other con, right? Or this con here is one that I can't really accept, but I'm okay with this con. Or this pro, I think, is far more beneficial for me than the other pro of that other idea. And I think that would be a very, very healthy way for us to make decisions rather than comparing the pros to the cons of the other side, right? So that's something we were discussing and talking about. And we broke it down, which is kind of cool, how we can discuss and talk and then later break it down to the way that is the most fitting way more than anything else, either way. All right, so that's kind of one of those things I noticed. I hope it's something that if you guys are all discussing or going through some major decision you're making in your life, I think that's a great way that we have to kind of reassess our minds and how we do it. Okay, just it's Friday. Quick reminder for Espresso with Sky. Yes, there's not going to be a video this week. There's not going to be one until the 15th. So just make sure everyone realizes and understands that this is something that that is a purpose. We're doing this on purpose, and we're not making any videos. We're taking a break and vacation right now. All right. So of course, Sunday editions, I need to get back into this, but I will get back into it right when I get back from, maybe I should have an interview while I'm in Houston. That would be kind of cool too. Either way. So also want to let you guys know, all of you guys that are supporting on Patreon, super thankful for you guys, and we will be having new videos after I get back from Houston. All right. So let's get into some music, some member artists from around the world on this relaxing Friday. So we're going to start off with a brand new song that we just played last week. This is Nature from Diowings, and she is the rapper of the group, and she has this new single called Focus featuring Beat G from Korea. After that, we have Kumachung from Japan with Open My Eyes, and we'll end things off with a favorite of a lot of people, that's Kiro Black, and Julius from Australia with inside my head.
Focus, because 지금 필요한 건 집중. 이거 저거 기웃기웃거리지 마. Stop it. Focus, because 지금 필요한 건 집중. 이거 저거 기웃기웃거리지 마. Stop it.
네가 보든 말든 내말 보고 Take it from red to purple 나라 투급하늘 위로 빛깔 번쩍 내려 삐룩 좀 엄하고 내려가본 고양이 내려가본 강아지부터도 날 따라와 구석에 그만 박혀 있고 좀 나와봐 네 빗부모 여기 뻔히 벌써 네가 다 먹어 지금 어디에 중요하다 진짜 생각 좀 해봐봐 이것저것 그렇게 기웃거릴 때가 아니야
넌 대체 어디에 또 포커스를 둬 Talk about me 문제의 이유 Because of you 또 찾는 남에게서 너의 마음에서 시작된 근본의 문제 그 다음에선 내가 맞으니 넌 틀리다는 논리 어거지 동기부여 여기저기 입으로 떠들어대기만 하면서 변명들을 줄 세워 결국 다른 방향 삼지 한 제대로 배워
stay 맨날 고민했던 포스팅 거만 쥐었잖아 포스팅 보여주기 시계 포스팅 고민 그만 다 비슷한 생각들이 그만
그 많고 많은 변명은 허니란 병명 거짓 낳고 나 계속 돌이키지 못해 영영 돌아오지 못할 깐 건너지 마라 제발 다 결국 못 참고 제발 저리고 다 도망쳐 후다닥
Adios 끝날 때 일말의 후회는 있지 않까 Adios 서로 한 발짝 두 발짝 걸어온 길들을 은은하게 잔잔하게 세상이 다 날 도와주는데 할 수밖에
그래서 임마 넌 얼마나 What? 도대체 진짜 넌 얼마나 What? 너 들이댄 잣대 왜 함부로 판단해 네 자신이나 신경 써 답은 간단해
Sorry I'm busy, don't hit me up Wherever you say I am doing me Sorry I'm busy, don't hit me up Wherever you say I am doing me
Sorry I'm busy, don't hit me up. Whatever you say, I am doing me. Sorry I'm busy, don't hit me up. Whatever you say, I am doing me.
Wherever you say I am doing me
Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart, 見心探して Open the eyes, open the door, open my heart, 未来照らす my way 揺れないで go 揺れないで go どんなかな迫害が来ても動じない強い信仰を持って立ち向かおうファミリーで go ファミリーで go 全ての人を受け入れられる家族のような温かさを持ってゆこう主の御心ファーストでゆこういつも主の心情と共に主の言葉を最優先にして動き出そう伝えよう御言葉を実践し挑戦してナンバーワンを目指してゆこう全ての個性才能生かし挑戦しよう主役になろう伝えたい I'm happy I'm happy 新しく You are shining You are shining 伝えたい I'm happy I'm happy 新しく You are shining You are shining オープンでこうオープンでこう地域や社会の目線に立ち発展に積極的に貢献しよう近づいてこう近づいてこう全ての世代と距離を近く親しく接したならは僕をなそう縛られてる心を捨ててこう新しい取り組みをしよう主の言葉で心を燃やして動き出そうどんどんチャレンジしよう家族のような温かさで愛に満ちた教会しよう CGM オープンの先駆者として強みを生かし大胆になろう伝えたい I'm happy I'm happy 新しく You are shining You are shining 伝えたい
してナンバーワンを目指してゆこう全ての個性一切の生かし挑戦しよう主役になろう Open the eyes Open the door Open my heart 見たこの探して Open the eyes Open the door Open my heart 未来照らす my way
It's the dawn of the dead. Society's full of zombies and I'm fighting for survival. It's just me and the voice inside my head, that's my rival. It's peaceful in my city, but I think I'm going psycho. An upside down world where people look down to their idols. Yeah, my mind space is like a hellscape, but planet Earth's a crazy place. So stay in my own world between reality or insanity. The lines are blurred, and I don't know what's real anymore, or what's inside my head. All these thoughts that bring me down into the war inside my head. I'm living in the twilight zone. I'm hyper-connected, but at the same time disconnected. Convicted in large crowds is when I'm most on my own. Take a peek through the window of my soul. I've kept the fire burning ever since I heard that winter was coming. The coldness of their heart, there's no use running, no escaping. Deep to the bone, it leaves a king shaking in his throne. Yeah, I don't know what's real anymore, or what's inside my head. All these thoughts that bring me down into the war inside my head. Don't know what's real anymore, or what's inside my head. All these thoughts that bring me down into the war inside my head. It's the dawn of the dead. Society's full of zombies and I'm fighting for survival. It's just me and the voice inside my head, that's my rival. It's peaceful in my city, but I think I'm going psycho. An upside down world where people look down to their idols. Yeah, my mind space is like a hellscape, but planet Earth's a crazy place. So stay in my own world between reality or insanity. The lines are blurred.
And that was Kiro Black and Julius Miyumo from Australia with Inside My Head, and that is a very, very popular song. Before that, Kumachung from Japan with Open My Eyes. That song was made for the opening of their brand new church. And of course, featured artist of the day, that is Nature and Beat G from Korea with Focus. All right, so let's get into some news going around the world. And as brides of this history, this is really important for us to pray for all things going on. And we know that God listens to the prayer of the righteous, and this is why the righteous have to pray knowing what is going on, right? So Sunseam says, top 3 reasons why we look at world news. Number 1, to see what we need to report and pray for. 2, see what God is doing. And number 3, what are the things we can comfort God's heart in? Okay, so let's start off with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And we see that President Zelensky of the Ukraine hails good news as settlements recaptured from Russia. Ukraine's President Zelensky said he has good news, claiming the recapture of several settlements from Russia. Rumors have swirled for days about a possible breakthrough in the eastern Kharkiv region, but with no word from Ukrainian officials. Zelensky declined to name which places had been retaken, saying that now is not the time to name them. Separately, U.S. officials said Ukraine was making slow but meaningful progress against Russian forces, and speaking in his nightly video addressed to Ukrainians, Zelensky said there was good news about the rumored success of Ukrainian troops. And he was quoted, "I think every citizen feels proud of our soldiers," and he said, naming specific military units and applauding their bravery in combat. But he did say, now is not the time to name the settlements to which the Ukrainian flag returns. Ukraine has tightened its operational security in recent weeks, sharing few details about a widely expected counteroffensive in the east and south. Ukrainian soldiers have launched an offensive southeast of Kharkiv towards the eastern region of Donetsk, over which Russia has maintained substantial military control since the war began 6 months ago. Some reports suggest Ukrainian forces may be a few dozen kilometers from the city of Izium, an important link in Russia's military supply chain. And speaking at an event in the United States, Colin Kahl, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, suggested that Ukrainian forces were performing better than Russian troops in some areas. It is early days. I think the Ukrainians are making slow but meaningful progress, and we'll see how things pan out. And this is what he was quoted saying by Reuters news agency. But he also said, I certainly think things are going better on the Ukrainian side right now in the south than is true on the Russian side. The situation, however, remains fraught. In its nightly update, the Ukrainian General Staff said on Wednesday that it had repelled all Russian attacks in the Kharkiv and Donetsk regions, but that both sides continue to exchange artillery and airstrikes, damaging a dozen different places. Zelensky also said on Wednesday that Ukraine's national budget next year would be that of a country at war, with more than $1 trillion hryvnia, right, which comes to about $27 billion US spent on defense. But he promised key social provisions such as pensions would be maintained. However, it is necessary to reduce as much as possible all non-critical expenses, he warned. All that does not help defense does not help the economic development of the country, social and cultural provision of our people. So that is some of the good news coming out of the Ukraine. Also, the EU plans to price cap on Russian gas. So as European countries struggle with soaring energy prices, the EU executive body has proposed capping the price of Russian gas. The plan is part of a series of measures outlined by European Commissioner Chief Ursula von der Leyen ahead of a meeting on Friday where EU energy ministers will try to decide how to protect consumers and businesses from winter price rises. And they said, we must cut Russia's revenues, which Putin uses to finance the atrocious war. But Russian President Putin condemned the price cap proposal as stupid and said Moscow would react by halting supplies completely. And he said, we will not supply gas, oil, coal, heating oil. We will not supply anything, he said, if it went against Russia's interests. Speaking at an economic forum in Vladivostok, he also said Russia was coping with Western economic aggression while sanctions were hitting Europeans' quality of life. So that's what's happening with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So let's move into the UK. So yes, there's a new prime minister over there in the UK. However, the Queen is under medical supervision at Balmoral. So the Queen is under medical supervision at Balmoral after doctors became concerned for her health, Buckingham Palace has said. All the Queen's children are gathering at or are traveling to her Scottish estate near Aberdeen. Following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision, a statement said. The Queen is comfortable, it added. It is very unusual for Buckingham Palace to put out a statement like this. It is usually unwilling to provide a commentary on the 96-year-old monarch's medical matters, which are seen as private. Her son, Prince Charles, is at Balmoral with his wife Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, and her grandson, the Duke of Cambridge, other sons, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex, and his wife Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, arrived at Aberdeen Airport just before 4 p.m. Local time. And they have traveled to the Queen's Scottish estate about 64 kilometers west of Aberdeen, and her daughter, Princess Anne, was already in Scotland undertaking engagements and is in Balmoral. So the Duchess of Cambridge has remained in Windsor with their children on their first full day at school. The Duke of Sussex is traveling separately to Balmoral. A spokeswoman said his wife Meghan was not accompanying him. The US-based couple had been in the UK to attend a charity function. So there are clearly pressing concerns for the Queen's health, much more explicitly put than before, and without any reference to this only being about difficulties with mobility. And there are also warnings against unfounded speculation, such as that she might have had a fall. And on Tuesday, she was photographed smiling as she appointed new Prime Minister Liz Truss. But from the last-minute cancellation of what would only have been a virtual meeting of the Privy Council of senior ministers, there's no mistaking the fragility of the Queen's health. And it's quite interesting because, it sounds like we're talking about a podcast from the Middle Ages, talking about, the Prince and the Duke of Wessex and the Duke of Cambridge. But, that's still something that's happening in the UK right now at this moment. But prayers go out to the Queen, which will be, I do think if she does pass away, will be a major, probably a big shift when it comes to spiritually also. 96 years old. So let's go into the last part of the news. We're going to go to Australia as they set a new climate target in a landmark bill. Australia's parliament has passed legislation enshrining a pledge to slash carbon emissions by 43% by 2030 and to net zero by 2050. The country is one of the world's biggest emitters per capita, and the target brings it more in line with other developed countries. But critics say government plans to reach the target are lacking detail. Some have been demanding a higher goal as well as a ban on new fossil fuel projects in the country, but Prime Minister Anthony Albanese had lauded the new law, the climate change bill, as an end to a decade of climate policy inaction, and it marks the first significant action against climate change since the party took power in May. The Labour government's climate bill cleared the Senate by 37 votes to 30 after accepting minor amendments by independent David Pocock. And Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen told Parliament, "Today is a good day for our Parliament and our country, and we're going to need many more of them," The Guardian reported. The former government had angered allies with its short-term emissions reductions target, which was about half what the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says it needed if the world has any chance of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But there is strong support within the parliament for greater action on climate change. Many independents campaigned on the issue of climate change and wanted a 2030 target of at least 50%. Meanwhile, the Greens party said the passing of the bill was a small step in tackling the climate crisis. Most also want a ban on new coal and gas projects, something they say the target cannot be achieved without. So that's the top 3 news around the world. Hope it's something that you guys can think about too, which moves us into some sporting news. All right, so let's start off with the NFL. Yes, the NFL is back in action. The season starts today with the huge game. The Buffalo Bills go to Los Angeles to play the Rams in SoFi Stadium. Yes, LA Rams are the reigning champions, and they'll be fighting Buffalo. New kid in town with QB Josh Allen as a future of the league against Matt Stafford, who won the Super Bowl last year, and Stafford had off-season elbow surgery, and it seems he is doing fine now. But that's going to be an amazing game to kick off the season. Also, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens set a deadline for last talks on negotiations for his new contract for this Friday. And after that, he wants to focus on the season and will negotiate after the season if nothing gets done. In basketball news, not the NBA, but it's going to be the Euros. And the Euros seem more exciting because they have some amazing quality players. And we start off with Giannis Antetokounmpo of Greece scores 41 points for Greece after missing the previous Eurobasket game. After taking Monday off for rest, Giannis simply overpowered Ukraine and ensured that Greece would finish atop Group C. Antetokounmpo had 41 points and 9 rebounds in just 27 minutes to lead Greece to a 4-0 record. 4-0 record. He was 13 of 18 from the floor, 15 of 18 from the foul line, and Antetokounmpo's point total was the most in a Eurobasket game since Dirk Nowitzki had 43 for Germany in 2001. And when he heard that stat, all Antetokounmpo did was nod. But that wasn't just it. Luka Doncic just recently scores 47 points, second most in Eurobasket history to lead Slovenia past France. Doncic scored 47 points, the second most by anyone in the history of the European Championships, and led Slovenia past France 88-82 on Wednesday for the top seed out of Group B going into this weekend's start of the knockout round. Eddie Terrace The person with the record right now is Eddie Terrace, had 63 points for Belgium against Albania in 1957, and that's the only Eurobasket performance in which someone had more points than Doncic did Wednesday. The previous second best effort was 46 by Greece's Nikos Gallis against Sweden in 1983. Last but not least in sports, let's go into some soccer. Yes, Champions League still going on right now. Napoli shocks Liverpool with a dominant 4-1 win in Champions League Group A. Liverpool were rocked by a dominant Napoli as the Premier League side fell to a 4-1 defeat in the Champions League group stage on Tuesday. The 21-22 Champions League runners-up have struggled to maintain their usual commanding form in domestic football this season, and their struggles continue in Naples. They found themselves 3-0 down by halftime, and Luis Diaz's 49-minute goal was a mere consolation on a torrid night for Jurgen Klopp's side. Barcelona, on the other hand, Robert Lewandowski hailed a spectacular after history-making Champions League hat-trick. Barcelona coach Xavi Hernandez says he is already running out of praise for the spectacular Robert Lewandowski after the striker's hat-trick in Wednesday's 5-1 Champions League win against Victoria Plzen. Lewandowski, 34 years old, took his tally for Barca to 8 in 5 games since his $45 million transfer move from Bayern Munich, while he also moved past Karim Benzema to become the third highest scorer in the history of the Champions League. The Polish international has now registered 89 goals in the competition. Only Cristiano Ronaldo with 140 and Lionel Messi with 125 have managed more. Last but not least, we have Chelsea hiring a new manager. It is Graham Potter from Brighton takes over Thomas Tuchel. So Chelsea have announced Graham Potter as a new manager replacing Thomas Tuchel, who was sacked on Wednesday. Potter, who joins from Brighton and Hove Albion, becomes the 30th manager in Chelsea's history, the first managerial appointment under new American owner Todd Boehly, who sacked Tuchel after 100 games in charge. All right, so there it is, guys. That is the top 3 news in sports and around the world. So you know what that means. Yes, it is the golden time. And yes, it is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope all of you guys here are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So what are we going to praise today? We're going to start off with Untrusted to the Lord, I Have Only God, and then we'll end things off with The Place Where the Lord Dwells. All right, so as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Trust all your fears to the Lord, all your cares and burdens. The Lord cares for you. He shall come to your aid. When the time comes, He'll reach out. He shall time comes, the Lord God's hand will guide your path, for His tree and for His will us your life and surrender everything. For the Lord God knows the best till the end. He will lead you on the path of life. For the Lord God knows the best till the end. He will lead you on the path of life. God of love, God of unchanging love, you've called and chosen me, loving me endlessly. God of power, God of unyielding power, never forsaking me, you are my help. Mighty God, I am yours to love evermore. Mighty God, I am yours, your bride for all time. From all the world you've chosen me, and now I have firmly set my mind. I will certainly live according to your will. Mighty God, I am yours to love evermore. Mighty God, I am yours, your bride for all time. From all the world you've chosen me, and now I have firmly set my mind. So I certainly will fulfill your will, my God. You're my Jehovah God, who has led me this far. Please lead me all the way. I'm calling on you alone and living by only your word. With all your authority and your power, you constantly help me. With all your authority and your power, you keep me from harm. You are with me all the time, always giving me strength and hope. I've nothing to fear, because I only look to my God.
upon your name, my Lord. Right now, I just want to be right next to you. With a heart that is so full of praise, I have come to finally realize, my Lord, you're surely in this place. Always until the end, you kept your promise that you'd be with us until the end of time. Oh my Lord, you never have forgotten us. You are by our side and bless us endlessly. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. We are so in love, we just want to live with you. When we think of the way you're always here running with us, we're so grateful, Lord, and we just can't forget. You're in this church of peace and love abounding. I'm rejoicing in this heaven on the earth. With my heart set firmly on that world of gold, I will keep my faith and glorify your name. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. I am so in love, I just want to live with you. When I think of the way you're always here running with us, I'm so grateful, Lord, and I just can't forget. I'll live only for the word of the Lord. I'll fulfill this great history with the word of the Holy Son. Only you, Lord, you are the shepherd of my life. Oh my Lord, I am lacking, so I plead. Teach me, please. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. I am so in love, I just want to live with you. When I think of the way you're always here running with us, I'm so grateful, Lord, and I just can't forget. Lord, you are my bridegroom. Please receive my love. I just want to live with you in the world of gold. I will bear many fruits of love and fruits of thanksgiving, and together make this history of life. And together make this history of life.
And there it is. That is the place where the Lord dwells. Before that, I have only God and entrusted to the Lord. All right, so now that our hearts are made ready from this time of praise and worship, let's get into today's word study. And of course, every single Friday, we do have the Wednesday service, the Wednesday message word study. And it was a very, very good one this week. There's no notes, like people aren't getting the script sent out or anything else like this. It is purely on like the responsibilities to the head leaders to make a sermon through the notes that they get directly from Sunsteam. So this is kind of interesting. I'm not sure exactly why like in Korea, they get the actual notes from Sunsteam, and I think part of it has to do with some people are trying to say that Sunsteam's not writing the messages. So I think sending out the notes like in their original form is actually proving to people, no, this is actually coming from Sunsteam, which is really weird that people are actually saying that, but. Let's get into the Wednesday message, all right? So, of course, this week's message is about only those that endure until the end will be saved, right? It's the big message that Sunsteam has given as his big philosophy is do it until the end. And, just a little plug, a shameless plug that we do have shirts, do it until the end in our in our Providence store. So you can check it out in the link below, right? That there is a Providence store we have with all these different shirts with Sunsteam's Proverbs on it. So let's get into it right now, okay? So this week's message, it's comparing to the time of Jesus, where Jesus says, you are not being blocked or persecuted because you're bad or you're wrong in doing something. It's because of the Lord. It's because of me, right? And it's because you made up your mind to stay. You made up your mind to be here in this history. Yeah, these difficult times are going to come, but they will also pass, right? And in the end, we will see each other. And I think that's a very comforting thing that, hey, it's going to be difficult. We may not be able to see face to face right now. A lot of us can't see Sunsteam right now either. But in the end, we will see each other. And I think that's a very, very important point that we have to realize even more. And this is why when it comes to the words of God we get every single week and these amazing words we're getting right now, we need to arm ourselves with the words of God, receive the strength, and go until the end, right? Like, that's why in this week's scriptures, like we see so many times Jesus telling his disciples, do it until the end, right? Do it until the end and then you'll be saved. Do it until the end and you'll be successful. And when you look at the lives of the disciples, it was terrible when you think about it just from from an outside perspective. Like Peter was supposedly crucified upside down. Stephen was stoned. All these people were like killed in their life of faith, even after Jesus came back. And we have to look at that too and say that life is not going to be so much better. And that's one of the things we're going to get into the points later is not about the problems, how big or small the problems is. That's not the big point. But people seem to be taking that as the major point when it's not, right? And here's the thing. One of the scriptures that was brought up in the message, I'm not sure if you guys heard it in your message, was from the book of John, chapter 8, verse 28. And what Jesus says to the people says, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me, right? So this is a very powerful verse, is because you may not see it like directly right now, but you need to understand that stuff's going to happen. Where there's going to come a point where everyone who came with faith, knowing, like, even though I don't see God literally working with Sunsteam or whatever it is, there's going to come a time when you see it. And you're going to be like, that is 100% where faith is no longer needed, right? And that's something that we have to take into consideration for ourselves too. Yes, we have to believe and have that absolute faith, even though it's hard, even though it's difficult. But when you think about it really, really carefully, there will come a time when you are absolute, where all the faith that you had before will be rewarded. That what the Lord does is not on his own. It's from God who gives him power and strength. And this is why we have to do it until the end. You will see at the end, right? Even though we have all those miracles and things that happen, like even talk about that soccer tournament on Saturday, Sunday, so many things happen. We're like, oh my goodness, that's so crazy, right? And you're like, wow, you could believe it. However, there comes, even then, there could be that slight, people could just say, that's coincidence. Oh, come on, right? It was just good games or whatever it was. But there will come a time where the Son of Man is lifted up, and then you will know, you will 100% know that he is the one, and he does nothing on his own, but does exactly what God tells him to do. Right? And we need to understand that, this is why we need that absolute faith right now. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, we don't see 100%. But that faith is what's going to save us in the end. Where God is like, yeah, It took faith, and you didn't know 100%, but you believed with just from all the different things that you had, and from that faith, you will be blessed for it. You will be delivered. You will get power from God, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Son, through the Lord, and you will defeat the wicked, the Satans, and you will overcome yourself. And this is when salvation will be taken, right? And this is what it means. We have to do it until the end. Do it until you achieve the goal. Do it until everything is completed, right? And one way that Sansi put it is, do it to the point you have done everything and you could do nothing more, right? You've done everything and nothing more. And I think it's also something that you could look at from yesterday's Q&A Thursday. Someone asked the questions, when is the end? And we looked at, some things don't really literally end. Like the rapture, you're going to do it till you die. There's no stopping it. So what does that mean? Well, do it with all your heart. You got to break it down into steps, right? Some things are time sensitive and some things are task sensitive, right? So we have to realize, like, doing it till the end sometimes doesn't mean like the very end. Like when you die is the end in some things, right? It's perpetual, it's infinite. But we need to bring ourselves to that point, right? Where we can complete things and be happy with what we have, right? When the time goes out, right? It's true. We all have a time limit. And when that time finishes, you can't do anything more, like a soccer game, like life when you die. And we have to reach that level. And one of the things I really liked is, what is the best and greatest thing that we can achieve? And that is salvation. It's salvation, right? If you're saved from death physically, you can live out the rest of your life until you're 80 or 90, but it ends. But spiritually speaking, you come out of the domain of death, and then you come into the domain of life forever, eternal. And that salvation is the greatest thing that we can achieve. And we have to remember that in our heads. Because sometimes we lose focus on what we can gain from. And in the end, what do we do instead? We start to complain about the things we couldn't get. Oh, the car, oh, the house, oh, this or that, right? When the Spirit comes back to life, we will live forever, right? Forever. And it's the greatest miracle. Just as in the physical world, the greatest miracle is life. Whether it's a baby being born or saving someone's life is the greatest thing. But what's even greater is the Spirit. Because even if the body dies, the Spirit lives forever, right? And this is the point that I thought was very, very key and important for a lot of people to realize is, even if your spirit comes back to life, right? Even if your spirit comes back, it doesn't mean you don't have any more problems. Not a single person will be problem-free. Whether you believe in God or not, you're all going to face problems. The issue is not getting into a problem or having a problem. The severe issue is, can you resolve it? And that's a powerful statement. Everyone will get problems, but the biggest issue is, can you resolve that problem or not? Because if you can resolve it, then the problem isn't that big if you're able to solve it, right? So how do you resolve these problems? Well, it's this week's message. The secret to success is to do it until the end. Resolve all problems, and it'll happen when you do it until the end. You do it together with the Lord, with the Holy Trinity. And this is why doing it till the end, persevering until the end, is the answer, right? The Lord is giving us the answer through this week's message, right? That's the key. When we go to the end, Satan's wicked, the unrighteous, they cannot make it till the end. They can't. They're not predestined to make it to the end. They won't go. If you go to the end, you'll leave all the Satans and the wicked behind, right? And then those that hate you will all be gone. Only God and the Holy Trinity is waiting at the end, right? Got to go to the end, and the Holy Trinity will be with you. It is absolutely predestined that the wicked cannot reach the end, and God is always on the side of the righteous, right? And I hope that's something that we keep in our hearts and our minds. That is something that is really powerful when you think about that. So I really hope that all of us too, as you see how everything in the world, like that first video, everything in the world is perfect when it's done until the end, whether it's the ripening of fruit or whatever it is, right? But after that video, there's this one statement that I thought was really powerful is, half-hearted people can only go to 90%. I'm like going, isn't half-hearted people only getting to 50%? You know what I mean? Because that sounds like more similar. But if you think about it, if you do something half-hearted, You might get close to the end, but the key point is they never finish. Half-hearted people will never finish. They'll never go to the end, right? So when you think about it, half-hearted people could even go to 99%, but because they're half-hearted, they don't have the mentality to go all the way until the end. And I think that's a really important point that we have to make, right? Miracles take place if we do it until the end, right? Half-hearted people, the key point is they just don't finish. And you kind of look at them and say, oh man, you just had to do this and you would have finished, right? How many times have you said that to your friend or later realized about yourself, if you just did a little bit more, you could have made it, kind of thing, right? So I hope that's something that we can get our hearts and our minds thinking about even more clearly. I really liked, I always love it when Sunseem gives the message and then he gives a story of how he put the words of God into action. And he's talking about the water, the new fountain or the new spring that he made. And it's just so incredible how Sunseem puts the word into action. And then that week, he's doing it even more extreme, right? And you're like, what? Right? He's talking about that he's putting in a pine tree like a couple years ago. He saw water leaking from the ground and the water is not drinkable, so you can't really do much with it. And then he just talks about how he fixed it, that well from the persimmon tree. He fixed the spring, right? And he prayed to the Holy Spirit and he said he's going to do it till the end so people can have pure drinking, clean water. And basically, Jesus told him to drill a water hole near the old straw thatched roof house. And he's able to make an amazing spring there. And he said that spring produces enough water for 10,000 people per day. That's incredible. Spending just 1 week or it's that Wednesday message, which means it's from Sunday to Wednesday, which means in 3 days of doing things until the end, he was able to make a spring that brings enough water for 10,000 people to drink per day. That's incredible. And he says that the cleanliness of that water is second to the medicinal spring. So when you look at that, I think that is something that we have to kind of take into consideration. Whereas when the word comes out, even Sunseem thinking, what can I do this week's word in? And that's kind of how we have to practically put the words of God in. Like, what can I do now with that word? What's something that I haven't done until the end? What's something I haven't finished yet that I can finish this week? And the first thing he did was pray to the Holy Spirit. And then from there, he did it until the end. And then he reached his destination. And because you prayed to the Holy Spirit, she'll help you to get there till the end, right? What's the key point? The issue is not how big or how many problems you have. It's about whether you make up your mind to go until the end. Right? Because that is when you can resolve that problem, right? That's when you resolve it. So whatever we don't do until the end, the message said that's where problems happen, when you don't do it until the end and you suffer later on. Fixing your car, you don't fix it until the end and it causes more things to break down in your car and you suffer even more later on. And this is why we have to endure. There's pain and suffering we have to endure. Take action. Block the things that need to be blocked off. Throw away what needs to be thrown away. And we have to do the work absolutely until the end. Everything has an end point, right? And we have to reach that point. So when you reach that point, it's like, why do I even want to reach that point? Well, in the message it says, well, what's at the end? When you reach the end, you've achieved your hope and your goal. That's why you want to do it. You reap the rewards of doing it until the end. And you don't complete things and you reach the finish line, right? When you don't complete things and what's going to happen is you're going to reach the finish line and you're not going to reach the finish line and all those efforts you put in are wasted. And that's one of the things that Sunseem talked about in the past is if you do things like 80% and you don't finish it, then that 80% is worthless. You've done it for no reason. However, if you do things until the end, then everything, every single percentage from 0 to 99.99999 is all worth something. Don't make it worthless. You must do your work until the end. Your effort will not be in vain, and you will live receiving rewards of doing it until the end. Right? And that reminded me of sometimes we can get discouraged with evangelism. You've heard so many stories where someone was evangelized because they're giving out 500 flyers. And then that last flyer, they evangelized someone who became a big leader in Providence. That's 500. Then the 499 are worth it. But if you quit at $4.99, then the $499 are worth nothing. Right? It's worth nothing. Pray until the end. Evangelize until the end. Listen to the word until the end. Focus your heart until the end. If we understand this, the Lord, if we do things until the end, then the Holy Trinity is holding our hands because we went to the end. And this is why, what is our goal? Our goal is to do things until the end and take action. Think about right now, what are the things that you have started this week or last month and you haven't finished it yet? Whether it's a prayer condition, whether it's a journal, whether it's evangelism, whether it's any of these things, what are those things that you've done that you haven't succeeded or you haven't done until the end? In the end is the most ideal thing. In the end is where the thing that was supposed to be the way that God wanted will be completed. And that has to be our hope. You can do things half-heartedly, but you might not get anything in the end, or something that's so bad, it's not even ideal. Do it until the end. Even if it's difficult, walk that path. That end point was like, salvation too? You think salvation's easy? Salvation's not easy. We think, in the former faith, it's just believe and you're done. No, it's not that easy. Think about Jesus too. Even giving salvation, he had to give up his own life and being crucified in the most terrible way. And that's how. How did that happen? It was difficult. Even giving salvation is difficult. We received this salvation, so realize the value of what we have. Manage yourself. Make yourself. Ensure your salvation. It's about managing, it's in the end, it's about the only person you can manage and truly take care of is yourself. So give thanks to God, the Holy Spirit, to the Holy Trinity who saved you, and then do your responsibility as a bride and realize this salvation is that big. Who is the greatest? It is the one that is fulfilled and received salvation, right? And even greater than the one who received salvation is us. Why? Because we have fulfilled the rapture of this time. We have received the Lord who came back and received the man of mission and became brides. So it is something that I think all of us have to really think about even more carefully. We've overcame so many things until this point. And some things we kind of overcame like nightmares. And, sometimes these things are popping up again as we have these slanders coming against us. It's popping up again. Son Steve himself said, I've suffered for such a long time and cried rivers of tears, but I endured until the end. Right? We'll be blessed. Endure it. It's hard. Endure it. Keep your faith and endure it. That's the greatest thing. Right? We have become the owners of this history, and we now have to become owners of this message of doing things until the end. We got to do it until the end. Right? So we kept the word, and this is why the blessings will be greater than the tribulations we go through. We look at these tribulations like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible, it's so bad, but the blessings will be greater than it. So do your responsibility until the end and endure. We're the brides. Pray and manage yourself. Listen to the words deeply. Manage the lives out there. Love the Holy Trinity and the Savior, and give thanks and glory throughout our entire lives. All right? So, that's the word study for today. Powerful message. That one point that really hit me was, just because you're saved doesn't mean you don't have problems. Problems are here and there. It doesn't even matter how big the problem is. It's about, can you resolve it? And the answer is, do it until the end. All right? So there is the word study for the Wednesday message. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. And just as I enjoy doing this too, and I hope that you guys will really open your hearts and your minds even more to what the Holy Trinity wants to do inside your life. Okay? So let's get into this song of choice for today on this Musical Friday. I found this live song so good with a real orchestra. It's done live. This is one of the most famous songs in musicals from, it's called A Little Night Music. And that is, I believe that's the name of the musical. But it's a famous song called Send in the Clowns. And this is performed by an actor, like we know her as an actress, but she's also a singer. It's Judi Dench, or they call her Lady, or is it Lady Judi Dench, right? And she's an actress, lots of great movies. I do believe she was M in like the the 007 movies and such. Great actress. I didn't know she was a performer, but oh man, I'll put the video link in the description. She is very powerful in this song. So everyone, please welcome on this Musical Friday from A Little Night Music musical. This song is Send In the Clowns.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Send in the clowns. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. Where are the clowns? Send in the clowns. Just when I'd stopped opening doors, finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours, making my entrance again with my usual flair, sure of my lines. No one is there. Don't you love fast? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry. Where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Don't bother. They're here. Isn't it rich? Isn't it queer? Losing my timing this late in my career. And where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Well, maybe next year.
And that is Judi Dench. Yes, I believe she's from the UK. Great song that is Send in the Clowns. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. It's really powerful emotionally. You got to watch the video on it. I'll put that link in the description, but it's really, really good. All right. So that brings us into the last section for today's podcast and for the entire week. We're going to get into Let's Testify with Thuli from Australia. It's going to be another great segment where she's going to read from the Vietnam book. Hope you guys really will enjoy this. It's about overcoming persecution. And, this segment is really, really good, but we're going to listen to another story. So hope you guys really enjoy this. So please welcome Thuli with Let's Testify.
G'day guys, it's Thuli from Australia, and this is of course another episode of Let's Testify. This segment started out as a place where we could reflect on the persecution and the final victory of historical figures like Apostle Paul and Martin Luther and others, because it's when we reflect on the past that we can truly give thanks for where we are now, and we can also have hope for our future. And then Let's Testify transitioned into a platform where people from all over Providence could testify about the work of God in their lives. Now we're in a third stage where we are listening to stories from Son Sang-nim's book, Love and Peace in the Vietnam War, Volume 1. So part 3 is really Son Sang-nim testifying about how God worked through him to bring peace in the Vietnam War. I hope this segment today testifies to you of the incredible discipline and loyalty of Son Sang-nim in the midst of the most trying of situations, and how God used him as a powerful tool to bring harmony to his unit in the Vietnam War. Enjoy. I am a peacemaker. After a few days, our unit was transferred to another area called Cam Ranh, where we set up camp and our home base for a few days' stay. We posted guards day and night and underwent constant training, including being educated in the events of the war up to that point. We also used the time to adapt to the tropical heat, which was often overwhelming. In Korea, farm work had included labouring under direct sunlight in extreme June heat, but Vietnam was hotter than that, even when we did nothing. After several weeks, soldiers started to collapse from heat stroke. It felt like we were fighting against the heat rather than against enemy soldiers. The heat made it difficult to even breathe, so engaging in mountain warfare in full battle gear seemed impossible. Just the thought of it made us feel helpless. Even while we were fighting for breath and roasting under the sun, there were some positives. One was being provided with plenty of sea rations and some of the same uniform and equipment the American soldiers used. Sea rations are food rations consumed during battle, combat rations. So they included things like canned meat, fruit, biscuits, coffee, cocoa, and sugar, all in small packages. I weighed about 65 kilos, 5 kilos more than I had in Korea, where food was more limited. Compared to military training in Korea with all kinds of stress and little food, roasting in the heat and fighting bravely for freedom in Vietnam wasn't so bad. At midday, the heat was so unbearable that even the lizards didn't come out of their caves. Those lizards were about the same width as a man's forearm, and we were scared of them at first because we thought they would bite like snakes. We tried to kill them with clubs, but they were extremely fast-moving. Later, we learned not only that they didn't bite, but they were actually quite friendly, and they would follow you around if you fed them. Sometimes, soldiers caught the lizards in the caves where they were hiding from the heat and cooked and ate them. In Korea, snake meat is considered to boost virility, and they thought lizard meat would have the same effect. Regardless of what generation it is, you can't stop men from eating anything that is said to boost their virility. I was really clueless about all that, so I couldn't understand why men needed more stamina and women didn't. It gave me a headache thinking about all the things I didn't know. I don't know if lizard meat really had an impact on virility, but this one time, nearly all the soldiers in our unit, including those on guard duty, jumped over the wire fence and stayed out all night in a nearby town without permission from the company leader. My job that day was to stand guard at a vulnerable post 15 meters up a tree. After receiving a series of educations from the regiment, the company leader suddenly returned to conduct a detailed inspection of the guard. When he found out that the soldiers on guard duty stayed out all night thinking they could relax, he really blew his top, shouting and snarling like a tiger in a rage. "Where are those little bastards?" Unable to sit still, the company leader stalked around until he reached my guard post. "Hey, who is on duty up there?" "I am Corporal Jong from the 1st Platoon." "Where the F did all the soldiers of your company go?" "I've been focusing on surveying enemy territory to the front, so I didn't see what happened behind me. I only saw a few men from the 3rd Platoon going outside the wire fence to buy something." "All those bastards went into town to hunt for women. I'm sure of it. You there, on guard, have you seen the adjutant?" He asked me, his voice loud and angry. "No, sir, I haven't." The adjutant is the 1st Lieutenant, the Deputy Commander, Company Commander. Back then, we didn't have cell phones or pagers, so there was no way to contact people immediately. Eventually, the company leader told me to keep my post and yelled at the soldiers on standby to go and bring in everyone from the town and tell them that the company leader had arrived and it was an emergency. From the guard post up a tree surrounded by sandbags, I turned my binoculars toward the town and looked for the soldiers. Sometime after the messengers had been dispatched, the company soldiers poured out of the village, urgently crawling all over the place and sneaking back into the camp through gaps in the wire fence. I was so appalled by their inappropriate behaviour in a war zone that I could barely breathe, and the hot wind didn't help either. How can they fight with that kind of attitude? I wondered, worrying if they would put all of our lives at risk. Watching through the binoculars, I saw that the soldiers coming in all had bloody noses, as if someone had beaten them up. I couldn't help thinking that it was more difficult to interpret their behaviour than to interpret the secrets of the Bible. If they went out to meet women, why would they come back with bloody noses? Did the women hit them for not spending enough money? I wondered. Later, I found out that the nosebleeds had been caused by undercooking the virility-boosting lizards. Soldiers share the same fate, so every time they got caught up in doing what they wanted and pleasing themselves, I was just as furious as the company leader. It's not the first time those scoundrels did this, and finally they got caught red-handed by the company commander himself. I bet they will get beaten until they see stars. Beating is the only way to bring sense to these psychos, I muttered to myself angrily. God sees everything, but I still told him about it. I prayed for their corrupt minds to be turned around. Soon after, the company commander's angry voice could be heard thundering across the whole camp. All the soldiers who had deserted their posts had to lie on their stomachs and be beaten. One of the team leaders who had gone into the town with them was beaten with a bedpost while the company leaders shouted at him, "Hey, you little prick! This is a war zone. Are you trying to kill your men? Is that all you learned in the army, you prick?" He ordered that platoon leader to beat the soldiers in the front-leaning rest position. Front-leaning rest position is the top of the push-up position widely used in the military, until they came to their senses. After being beaten that much, the platoon leader also lost his temper and beat the soldiers who had left their post with him, shouting, "Hey, you bastards, this is a war zone! How dare you decide to leave your posts? Are you here to sleep around? No, you're here to fight in a war. Come to your senses or you'll die!" I could see everything when I came down from the post at the top of the tree. All the shouting had made me feel uneasy, so I came down to find out what was happening. Then the company commander told the platoon leader, who had deserted his post, to get into the front-leaning rest position. The platoon leader pleaded, "Let's not do this," which further enraged the company commander. He screamed, "You little prick, you need to be educated again. Did you come here to die? Shouldn't you be on your best behaviour when the company commander isn't around?" The platoon leader answered, "I'm sorry, I'll do better." He didn't move when the company commander ordered him onto the ground, So the company commander picked up the handle of a pickaxe that was lying on the ground and struck him on the back and shoulders. I was on good terms with both the company commander and the platoon leader, so I boldly ran up to them and grabbed the handle of the pickaxe from the company commander. He looked at me and said, "Why aren't you at your post? Get back there immediately." I replied that all the screaming and yelling had made me uncomfortable until I couldn't just stay where I was. "Sir, I know you are furious enough to lose it, but you have to control yourself right now. Beating them won't make you feel better. Even without you hitting them, they must feel terrible. Their own consciences are pricking them like needles. I know it's upsetting, but think of how they feel and control yourself." I took the handle of the pickaxe from him and he let go of it, looking deflated. Actually, it's quite uncommon for a soldier to stop his superior officer from beating other soldiers, but it can be done if you go about it the right way. They are adults, not children, so you have to stop them if they are angry or fighting. At that moment, the company leader turned away from the soldiers he had been beating and looked at me. He confessed it was his own fault for not teaching those under his command properly. He wiped away tears with a handkerchief and said, "Who can I possibly blame?" Everyone else looked at him and apologized. All the officers apologized and promised to make responsibility for their actions. "It will never happen again. Please forget everything that happened today," they begged. It seemed that everyone felt sorry for their actions. "Since we all came here to survive together, let's all do our best. Don't you have wives and children you love back at home? Don't you want to return safely to the country that gave us birth and the brothers who are waiting for us?" With this final exhortation, he dismissed his subordinates and then apologized to the adjutant. The company leader, having now cooled off, gave me a firm handshake as if he were impressed that it was a subordinate who had brought about a peaceful resolution. He grinned and said, "This won't happen again, so keep an eye on me and you won't be disappointed." Actually, it would not have been easy for him to hold back his temper after what the soldiers had done. Just a few months after arriving in Vietnam, they had all lost their alertness and become lax with security. That would be enough to make any leader shocked and worried. But if they had really lost it, unpleasantness would have lingered in the days ahead when we should have been fighting together. After meditating between both sides, and when everyone had calmed down, I returned to my guard post, deep in thought. I thanked God, realizing that God had used me as a tool to bring harmony to the unit, and I prayed that He would continue to use me in that way. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this testimony from Sonsengnim and have a great day grounding yourself in the Word and prayer. Peace.
And there it is. That is Let's Testify with Tuli from Australia. Hope you guys really, really enjoyed that story. And I'm sure listening to these stories is really it kind of like it fills your heart and helps you to realize even more deeply about this history and about the Lord. And I hope that all of us too can keep listening to these stories. I know I talked about it yesterday too, some stories from the past about Sonsengnim in the Thursday podcast. So go ahead and listen to that segment too. A lot of early stories when I first came to province. It was really, really amazing. But everyone, I hope you guys have amazing and awesome weekend. I'm still here in Houston, Texas. Hope you guys will enjoy it. And we'll see you guys again next week on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop